Time for Conspiracy Theories Explained. We are going to walk through 7 specific cases where the official narrative was wrong and the conspiracy was real. Let's dig into the files. This first story feels personal rather than geopolitical. It concerns one of the greatest American writers of the 20th century, Ernest Hemingway. Towards the end of his life, Hemingway was a shadow of his former self. His friends were deeply concerned as he had become incredibly paranoid. He would stop in the middle of a conversation, looking over his shoulder, or claim that his phone was tapped. He insisted that unknown agents were opening his mail, following him, and even spying on him in restaurants. His family believed Hemingway was succumbing to delusions, perhaps driven by the trauma of his past. They tried to help him, treating his claims as symptoms of a breakdown. Sadly, this paranoia contributed significantly to the depression that stayed with him until he passed away in 1961. For decades, the narrative remained the same: a genius mind lost to madness. But in the early 1980s, through the Freedom of Information Act, the FBI released a 120-page file. It appears that the special services were, in fact, watching him. They were tapping his phones, going through his mail, and following him. It turns out Ernest Hemingway's perception was accurate. Now let's leave a writer's room and walk into your own kitchen. For decades, non-stick cookware was sold as a miracle of modern chemistry: slippery, easy to clean, and durable. But for years, there were whispers in rural communities near the manufacturing plants that something wasn't right. Farmers noticed that their cattle were acting strangely or getting sick for no apparent reason. Locals suspected the water was tainted. For a long time, these concerns were dismissed as local rumors, and the company behind it maintained that their product was perfectly safe. This is a classic case of conspiracy theories explained through corporate documents. In the late 1990s, a lawyer named Rob Bilott took on a case for a farmer in West Virginia. Documents revealed that the company had known for decades that a chemical used in the process, PFOA, was hazardous. Yet they didn't report it to the authorities or the public. Instead, they kept the data hidden to protect the success of their flagship product. It wasn't paranoia, but a paper trail proving that profit had been prioritized over transparency. Speaking of things we consume, if you look at diet advice from the 1980s and 90s, you'll notice one huge trend: the demonization of fat. Low-fat yogurt, low-fat cookies, pretty much low-fat everything. People were convinced that fat was the public enemy #1 for heart health, while sugar was treated as a harmless source of energy. The unpopular yet well-known conspiracy theory was that the food industry was manipulating science to keep us eating sweets. And indeed, in 2016, researchers uncovered historical documents showing this shift wasn't entirely accidental. In the 1960s, the sugar industry members wrote a check to scientists for the equivalent of about $50,000 today. For what? To produce a review that minimized the link between sugar and heart health and shifted the blame entirely onto saturated fat. The resulting study was published in a prestigious medical journal, influencing dietary guidelines for decades. It wasn't a secret society ruling the world, but a trade group simply buying a scientific narrative that favored their product. We trust labels on our food, but what about the appliances in our homes? Have you ever felt like your grandmother's toaster is still working, but your new one broke after 2 years? You might call it bad luck, but there is a conspiracy theory called planned obsolescence. The idea that companies build things to break on purpose so you have to buy them again. It sounds cynical, but in the 1920s it was a documented business strategy. Let me introduce you to the Phoebus cartel. In 1924, the world's biggest light bulb manufacturers met in Geneva. They had a problem. Their light bulbs lasted too long, burning for up to 2,500 hours. This meant people didn't need to buy replacements often enough. So, the cartel signed an agreement to deliberately reduce the lifespan of their bulbs and set a new standard of 1,000 hours. If a factory produced a bulb that lasted longer than that, the company was actually fined. This was one of the first global examples of companies conspiring to lower product quality to increase sales. We see a similar pattern in the automotive industry. For decades, gasoline contained lead to stop engine knocking and improve performance. Almost immediately, workers in the factories producing this leaded gas started getting sick, hallucinated, and suffered severe physical symptoms. The conspiracy theory that emerged was terrifying. Industry is covering health risk to keep profits flowing. But the industry fought back. Famous inventor and chemist even held a press conference where he poured leaded gasoline over his hands and inhaled the fumes for a full minute, claiming he could do it every day without harm. Spoiler, he later had to take a long leave of absence to recover from lead poisoning. For decades, the industry funded research that claimed lead was safe, until the 1970s and 80s when the truth became undeniable. The crazy theory that car exhaust was poisoning the population turned out to be a scientific fact suppressed for profit. What do we know about diamonds? They are rare, and you need to spend at least 2 months' income to buy an engagement ring. And yes, this is perhaps the most successful marketing conspiracy in history. For years, a theory circulated. Diamonds aren't rare at all, but global monopoly hide the truth. In the late 19th century, massive diamond mines were discovered in South Africa. Suddenly, diamonds weren't rare at all. The market was about to be flooded, which would make them cheap and common. To prevent this, major investors consolidated into a single entity and took control of the supply chain. They created a system where they only released a limited number of diamonds to the market each year, creating an artificial scarcity. And there's more. They hired an ad agency to convince the world that diamonds were the only symbol of true love. They invented the slogan, "A diamond is forever," and the 2-month salary rule. The conspiracy here is simply marketing. Finally, let's look at a modern tech mystery. A few years ago, smartphone users started noticing something annoying. Whenever a new model came out, their old phones seemed to suddenly get slower. And you know how it works. The forums went wild with a specific conspiracy theory. People claimed the producers was sending out kill switches in software updates to force people to upgrade to the newest model. Companies said it was just paranoia, or that new apps were just too demanding for old hardware. But in 2017, the truth came out. As it turned out, the company was deliberately slowing down older phones via software updates. The company later admitted it, but they gave a different reason. They claimed it was to prevent old batteries from shutting down unexpectedly. Figure this out. The suspicion that your phone was acting weird because of a hidden software wasn't a glitch. It was a feature. These stories remind us that while healthy skepticism is vital, sometimes corporate agendas are stranger than fiction. It wasn't about secret societies, but about boardrooms and bottom lines. We hope you enjoyed this explanation of conspiracy theories, or rather, secrets that turned out to be real.